My name is Katie Wilts, and I am a master's student at the University of Minnesota. And essentially today I'm going to be presenting the extension program that I have planned in regards to my research on the economic feasibility of growing cover crops. So a little bit about my background. I'm from Western Minnesota, and I grew up on my family's crop farm. And really all of the experiences that I had growing up on the farm led me to attend the University of Minnesota, both for my undergraduate degree and for where I am right now with my master's degree in pursuing a degree in applied economics. So for our agenda today, first we're really going to talk about the issue of sustainability in agriculture and cover crops, and my research that I'm doing in the economics of cover crops. And then we'll move more so into the extension program that I have planned for my research. So this picture here on the left, it's a cornfield that has been harvested. And on the left-hand side, there's green. And that green is cereal rye, which is a common cover crop grown in Minnesota. On the right-hand side of the photo, there's no cover crop grown. So this is what I'm referring to today when I talk about cover crops is the left-hand side and no cover is the right-hand side. So the overarching issue really is sustainability within agriculture. But what is sustainability? How do we define it? Well, first of all, we have environmental sustainability. So what is good for our environment? Then we also have an aspect of social sustainability. And then last but not least, and what is usually forgotten actually, is economic sustainability. Now, what happens when economic sustainability is forgotten? Something is good for the environment and it's good for the people that surround that. However, it doesn't have the financial backing to last a long amount of time. So where the three of these meet is really the perfect building blocks for incorporating cover crops into a farm. Cover crops are great for the environment. They also provide a lot of social benefits. And when they are economically sustainable, they can last for a long time on a farm. And this approach to sustainability is really often referred to as the triple bottom line method. So it's no secret that agriculture is very dependent on Earth's resources, but farmers know this and they're working really hard to overcome that strong dependency. So a few management practices that have come from this knowledge include reduced tillage systems, drainage management systems, and most recently, cover crop systems. The first two are really set apart from cover crops though, because they were adopted at a very high rate in regards to cover crops and much sooner than cover crops were. So for example, a good visual of this comes from the 2017 Census of Agriculture. Of the total cropped land that's reported in the Census of Agriculture, 104 million acres are reported as being no tillage. However, only 15.3 million acres are reported as using cover crops. The cool thing though is that of the no tillage acres, this number only increased 8% since the 2012 Census of Agriculture. But the cover cropped acres, that number increased by 49%. So there's clearly a growing demand for cover crops, which is why my research is so critical. So for the research that I've done, I use my data comes from a data set called FinBin, which is a farm financial data set. It's available for it has information for 12 different states within the United States. And FinBin was actually developed at the University of Minnesota. I, though, am only focusing on farms within Minnesota. So that gives me over 1,000 different farms with observations dating back to 1994. The cool thing about my data is that it's coming from actual operating farms rather than just from experiments. What I'm finding in my research is that cover crops have both direct impacts and indirect impacts. Now, at a glance, even you can see that the direct impacts are mostly related to costs, and the indirect impacts are mostly related to benefits. This makes the cover crop decision really difficult for farmers because the direct impacts, the impacts they see right away, go into their crop inputs, their costs. But the things that they aren't going to see for a long time are the benefits. So that creates this imbalance. But cover crops become feasible when we can find a balance between the two. However, this balance might come, but it might come over time. So for my research, I created a stochastic budget. So essentially, I assigned probabilities to different variables within the budget basically making, like, allowing for variation within those variables from year to year. I then took that budget and brought it across multiple years. So I was looking at the feasibility of cover crops both in year one, but then also in the future years to come. And from that analysis, I created an interactive spreadsheet tool for farmers to use when analyzing this decision. Here's a snapshot of the cover crop tool, what it looks like. So essentially, you can see farmers can input their data and then answer the questions that are on the left. Here's what it would look like as a filled out. This is just an example numbers that I put in. At the very bottom, you will see a column called total cost increase or decrease from cover crops. So this is really where farmers can see how their decisions or their answers in the tool, the result of those answers. In this example, there's a benefit of cover crops of $2.91 per acre. Depending on how farmers answer, this could be a negative number as well, where users are allowed to go back and change their answers and really play with the tool to find the optimal cover crop growing decisions that they need to make on their farm. This tool is really the basis for the extension program that I have planned. So let's get into the extension program. So I've really highlighted 3 different target audiences. The first, I would consider the primary audience, and that would be agricultural producers. I've talked a lot about farmers this morning, so it shouldn't be a surprise that I would consider them like the target audience. Essentially, farmers are going to be the main people who contribute to the cost of this practice. However, they will also see the main benefits, like financial benefits as well. So it's important that they are our target. But we know that farmers do not make decisions alone. So I also have a secondary audience of their helpers, so to say. So this would be soil and water conservation districts, and also other stakeholders that include lenders and crop consultants. So the title of this program would be the 4 questions that you need to answer before planting cover crops. This title is really catchy, but it also shows farmers that they have a little bit of homework to do before they make the decision to go ahead and plant cover crops on their farm. So the 4 questions that we actually want to focus on throughout our extension program when we host events would be question number 1, what is your crop enterprise break-even cost? Number 2, what cover crops are feasible in your region and in your budget? Number 3, what % of your total acres will be planted to cover crops? And number 4, what is your preferred cost recovery time? Now, the goal of these questions is, or with all of these events, is that farmers and other attendees will walk out of these events either A, being able to answer all of these questions, or B, knowing what resources they can look to in order to provide or get help with answering these questions. So the overall goal of this program is to assist farmers in identifying the economic feasibility of growing cover crops. But I also have broken it down into 3 subcategories. The first is that we create educational opportunities for Minnesota farmers about the economic feasibility of growing cover crops. We also then are going to provide necessary resources and tools to help farmers make these informed and even confident decisions. And lastly, communicate all of the factors that are involved in this decision to other stakeholders, so the soil and water conservation district groups, lenders, and crop consultants. In terms of delivery methods, I have 5 different delivery methods outlined. The first would be field days, in-person workshops, and large group symposiums. The last 2 are mass media and online tutorials and resources. So the first 3 are probably our primary delivery methods, and the last 2 are important, but they're used more as supplemental information at this point. So the first delivery method is field days. The target audience for field days is really our farmers and soil and water conservation districts. Field days are nothing new, especially here in Minnesota. We have a lot of field days, especially in regards to soil health. I've been to quite a few. However, one thing that most of these field days fail to talk about or fail to mention are the economics of the soil health practices they talk about. So essentially at a field day, farmers and other attendees come and they have a little workshop in like a classroom, and then they go out into the field and look at the actual crop in the field. And so In addition to the current field days that happen, we will also add the economic aspects to really give farmers and other attendees a holistic view of the cover cropping system, in addition to the agronomics. So we'll give a 20-minute presentation about the economics of cover crops. Another piece of this is that we will provide signage with economic information placed in the signs for each particular cover crop. So on the left, I have an example here of cereal rye. So this sign would be placed right next to where the cereal rye is grown, so that as the farmers and other attendees at these events are in the field touching, feeling, smelling, seeing that cereal rye, they can also get a quick snapshot of what the economic impact of that cereal rye is. As I said, this is a great way to really unify the agronomics and the economics of these practices. But it's also a great opportunity for farmers to compare the economics of each cover crop as they're walking throughout the field. So the second delivery method is in-person workshops. And here I've got an interactive slide on the left. It's a potential slideshow that we would give. It'll start changing slides in a minute, so just be prepared. There it goes. The target audience for these, again, is farmers and soil and water conservation district folks. The purpose of these in-person workshops is more to hit the off season. So these would be the winter months that we would put these workshops on in regards to the field days, which would take place more late summer and into the fall. These would be about 30 to 45-minute interactive slideshows we would give in conjunction with like the agronomic side of the presentation that would be given by our other colleagues at the U of M and Extension. And essentially these would be presented all throughout Minnesota. We'll also be presenting at large group symposiums. Target audience for this is less on farmers and more into the soil water conservation district folks and other stakeholders, including lenders and crop consultants. So we will be partnering with the Minnesota Office of Soil Health for these symposiums. The Office of Soil Health puts on a symposium, 2 symposiums each year, one in April and one in December. So we would partner on as like an aspect of that symposium. These symposiums draw between 200 and 300 people. So this is a great way for us to reach them all in one place at one time. Mass media is also a large portion of this program. Essentially, we would create a social media plan to reach all of our target audience. We would also partner with the U of M Extension podcast team and bring in soil health experts and soil health economists to speak as part of this podcast. The main focus of mass media, however, comes to U of M Extension webpage. On the current U of M Extension website, there is not a page at all devoted to cover crop economics. So this is a great opportunity for us to create a hub for people to come to when they have cover crop economics questions. Certain resources will be provided to this webpage, and links to other resources that are out there. In addition to this website, we will also work in conjunction with other soil health organizations and commodity groups to really post our information to those groups as well. This would overall, working with these groups would overall just like reach, but also would serve as a great way to work with them. Last delivery method would be an interactive slide as well. And this is an example of what an online tutorial would look like. Essentially, there'd be a voiceover explaining to viewers of how to use this spreadsheet that I spoke on earlier. These tutorials will be posted to the U of M Extension webpage that I talked about in the previous slide. And essentially, the key here is that these are available to people who can't attend our in-person events. This is just an overall implementation strategy of how we'll be working throughout the year to incorporate this program. In terms of partnerships, we've created the U of M cover crop economics team, including both economists and our state's soil health specialists. For evaluation, we'll have both a post-event evaluation where people will complete a survey. Also, we'll be sending up a follow-up survey 6 months afterwards to see how our material and content is really being implemented on farms. And then we'll be tracking our participation at events as well. In terms of program benchmarks, These are what we would really like to see out of each of our in-person and online events. With that, I would like to open up the floor to any questions that you might have.
Okay, that is perfect timing. So thank